For several years now, Father's been walking with me as I learn and discover what it means to live in the now. And really, to preface it more, he's been teaching me to understand what it really means to live in the moment, within the structure of time and space. And so, the first of two main passages that he's been instructing me through is Hebrews chapter 4, which you may already be familiar with, where it talks about Yeshua being the double-edged sword, the blade that cuts or pierces. And this is sandwiched between a framework that deals with entering into the rest, into the Shabbat Shalom. And the Hebrews writer talks a lot about why in the first half of the chapter, why Israel couldn't enter the rest, and it centers around their unbelief. And then it dives into Yeshua as the cleaner, the butcher knife that cuts and divides and separates. And it's very interesting how the writer inserts this into the topic of entering into the rest. Then he comes back to discuss finding a way into the rest now while there's still an opportunity. And then ends with declaring that Yeshua will provide us the way to access that rest. So with that outline, let's begin to dive into what it means to enter into the now and how to stay in it. We're so focused on time and its influence on the culture around us. Everything we do and think is about preparing for the future and trying not to live in the regrets of the past. But we're so bound by the timeline, caught up by its urgency. And a lot of our focus on time is really fear-based. A lot of what we call prudent, smart, and wise decisions are ways of masking our fear about the unknown, being wise about planning for the future and making sure that bad things don't happen to us. We don't call them bad per se, but we definitely preempt them. We use preventative measures to avoid them, right? We don't want to look foolish, so we preempt the possibility of these foolish situations or these hurtful situations. And a lot of those preemptive actions are based out of fear, and we don't realize that until we dig into them. A lot of these preventative measures are to save us from pain and hurt, and that context by itself alone is a fear-based context, because we're afraid of something bad happening to us in the future. And so we make all these preventative measures to avoid running into those things, which are really vain imaginations, because they haven't happened yet. But we live so much into the future that we don't realize that we're missing out on the now. And the Shabbat Shalom, the place of rest, is where the now exists, or the now is Shabbat Shalom. And so Hebrews 4 cracks open this gateway. It reveals a gateway of how you get into the Shabbat Shalom, and what are the access points. The writer of Hebrews even pointed back to David and to a few others in the Old Testament, talking about while the day is still today, while it's now, make haste, strive, rush into the opportunity while it's now. And it's interesting because we always talk about striving. We shouldn't strive, but this one case, this one area in our development as sons, is to strive to enter the rest. Because of the effort that it takes to enter and stay in that rest, striving is necessary. It's not natural to the corruptive realm around us. And so we're working to push into and to stay in this rest. And so Hebrews 4 is about how to get into the rest. And the second half of this, of staying in the rest, comes out of 2 Peter 1, in which Peter gives us an understanding of once you've entered in, how to stay in. He gives you an alchemy of ingredients to maintain one's status of being in the now. But before I dive into the actual text, one of the things that led to this whole exploration of living in the now, living in the moment, came out of an encounter I had with the Father. Well, actually all three of them. It was an encounter inside a black hole, where my sight was inverted so what was dark became light, and what was light became dark. So I was actually able to see what was inside the black hole versus what was outside of it. And in that place, Father began to talk to me about time and time shards, and how within our being, we have the capacity to decode the shards of time that we call the timeline of humanity, and begin to break down and change to unlock or decode and be able to speak into the time shards, thus affecting the entire timeline of our history. And if you want to listen to the full encounter, I recently uploaded a recording of it on Substack. It's called The Time Shards of Now. Go take a look at it if you're interested. So from that encounter, Father began to branch off and expand upon the idea of living in the moment. Alongside this encounter, he also gave me a visual example of existing in the now. Have you ever seen those Tesla coil-like plastic spheres with the electricity coming off it? and when you touch it, the electricity sparks towards your hand. You can often find them in one of those futuristic, geeky curiosity shops. Well, anyway, from that imagery, he began to build out this idea that when we live in the now, we're actually standing in the center of that. And time extends out of you like electric arcs into the past and into the future. And like electricity or like lightning, it's looking for the path of the Spirit. If you've ever seen a slow-mo video of lightning strikes, really, really slow, like 30,000 frames per second, you can see how the lightning seeks out a path that we normally can't see with the natural eye. It's really amazing how it does it, right? And the Father began to talk to me about how our future does the same thing. There's all these possibilities in our future. We're constantly looking in the nanosecond space, maybe even faster than that, for our future moments. We're testing all these different options, different ways, possibilities of our future. Unfortunately, because of fear, we're unable to really map out the best possibilities, and fear influences our decision. But when we enter into the now, we're able to tap into the multiple possibilities of our future and choices because we are in the rest. And now we have the capacity to unlock the resources of heaven, to unlock the resources for our future. And it really goes beyond that. There's more to it. I'll have to take some time to dive into it more and break down some of the details at a later time. But the overarching idea is that when we are living in the now, we are standing where time and eternity meet. We become the portal through which the eternal resources of our Father and His kingdom comes through us and meets everything around us. It meets our future and it meets our past. It deals with our past issues and it deals with everything coming in the future because we're standing in the now. It's basically a framework or a portal where time exists but doesn't impact you. You impact time. And in that gateway flows the resources for your future. And it's really fascinating because it's not just flowing through you, it's also attracting your future. And so this came out of the encounter, which was really off my grid. But as I sat before wisdom and began to engage into it, and with my Father and with the Son and the Spirit, I began to bring out this revelation in scriptural format, tying the two together. And this is where I started in Hebrews 4, and then ended up in 2 Peter. So in the first verses of chapter 4 of Hebrews, starting really with verse 3, he talks about entering into the rest and says, "Now we who have believed enter that rest. As for the others, it is just as God has said, so I swore an oath in my anger, they shall never enter my rest. And yet his work has been finished since the foundation of the world. For somewhere he has spoken about the seventh day in this manner, and on the seventh day God rested from all his works." Of course, the writer of Hebrews is referring to Israel in the Old Testament, specifically where they came out of relationship, broke covenant through their unbelief. And you see it in verse 6, where he says, "Since then it remains for some to enter his rest, and since those who formerly heard the good news did not enter because of their disobedience, God again designated a certain day, as today." Again, the Greek word for now. He continues, "With a long time later, where you spoke through David, where you said, 'Today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts.'" So what we're seeing here, the idea the writer is establishing, is that Israel could not enter into the now, into the Shabbat Shalom, the day of rest, or Father's rest, because of their disobedience. That disobedience was born out of their unbelief, which kept them from accessing the rest. In truth, that unbelief was really the product of an underlying fear, resulting in a lack of trust, which gave way to disobedience. When you look at the testing that Yeshua went through in the wilderness, you see Israel's primary fear points. Where they failed, he succeeded. And that's why he had to go back into the wilderness to pass the test for mankind, to fulfill what they had failed to do, which was to answer these questions about the Father correctly. Are you really my source? Are you really with me? And are you really who you say you are? And what Yeshua did was to step into a place where he could answer those questions perfectly. But because of Israel's unbelief, they were kept out of the rest because they didn't trust him as their source. They didn't trust him to be who he said he would be for them. Therefore, their belief didn't line up, and they stepped into disobedience. Their fear that he wouldn't be what he was supposed to be for them kept them from entering into the rest. and so their fear turned into disobedience. So we come back to Hebrews, and the writer sets this premise saying, because of this fear, because of this unbelief, you can't enter his rest. But now there is still a time, there's still a now where you can enter into this rest. It's still available for those who will enter in by faith. And he reiterates it by saying, let us therefore make every effort to enter that rest, so that no one will fall by following the same pattern of disobedience. So this then leads us to 2 Peter, which gives us an outline of how to enter in and maintain a place within the rest by taking our faith with the truth that we know and mingling them together. And the Greek word the writer uses here is basically a synergistic thing. The idea of synergy is when two things work together, they produce something greater than the sum total of the individual efforts. And so what this does is unlocks a portal through mingling our faith with truth so that we can enter into this doorway. And it's a moment thing. It's not just something in the future or in the past, it's right now. It's tied to the moment you're in, the split second that you're consciously aware of in your mixing of faith and truth. You create an opening where you step into this rest. And that's how we engage in it, by living in the now. At this point, I'm going to bring this first part of learning how to live in the now to a close. In the next part, I'm going to come back to Hebrews 4 and discuss how Yeshua partners with us to help us successfully access and enter into the Father's rest. Thanks for taking time out of your day to listen to this podcast. It means a lot to me, and I hope you've enjoyed it and found encouragement. If you're a first-time listener or haven't been a regular follower, please consider subscribing to this podcast by clicking on the subscription button. If you're a subscriber, click the share button and pass it along to someone you know. I'd greatly appreciate it. If you're interested in learning more about Segulu Studios, check out my website at segulustudios.com. And you can also find me on Telegram, X, Discord, and YouTube. Until next time, continue to discover the you he designed you to be.